May this week's Devorah Torah be a Liluy Nishmas for my grandmother, Devorah Bas Tzvi Hirsch, whose Yartzeit is tonight. For Parshas Lecha, I want to share with you an idea based on the Sefer Kol Ram. It's a Sefer of ideas of Rav Moshe Feinstein. So he has an interesting perspective on the Parsha of Avinu getting a Bris Milah. Spoke last year in Vayera and Lecha a little bit about the greatness Avinu achieved. Madregas, where every action that he made was a siman, put things, concretize things for future generations. And the Rambam tells us how he spread love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he was mekarev hundreds of thousands of people. So we come to Perek Yud Zayin, Pasuk Chaf Daled, and Avinu is commanded it says that Avinu gave himself a Bris Milah. Avram was Ben Tishim V'Teisha Shan B'Mo B'Sar Alaso. He was 99 years old, and he got a Bris Milah. And the Sfarim list this as one of the Nisyonos of Avinu. And Rav Moshe wants to know why this was a big Nisayon for Avinu. Never thought about it. But if you think about it, if you think about who Avinu was, the idea that he wouldn't want to do it because it would be physical pain, maybe for you and me, but for Avinu, that wouldn't make it an Nisayon. That wouldn't qualify as an Nisayon. Talking about somebody who jumped into the Cheshvan and was willing to fight battles for when he thought it was the Ratzon Hashem. Not somebody who shied away from danger when he thought it was what God wanted him to do. And Moshe proves from an interesting Gemara that Avinu took upon himself this mitzvah with tremendous simcha. And Shimon Gamliel says, every mitzvah that Klal Yisrael accepted b'simcha, like Bris Milah, as it says, Sasanochi al-imrasecha kamosei shalarav, David HaMelech writes that I rejoice over this like finding a great treasure, adayin osa b'simcha. They still do it b'simcha. In other words, the Gemara is saying because Avinu accepted it with such simcha, that's why David HaMelech had simcha, and that's why we still have such simcha over the Bris Milah. It's referring to the Gemara where David was in the Beis HaMerchatz, and he said, I don't have my tzal, my tzitzis, I don't have my tefillin, I'm naked from any mitzvahs. And then he saw that he had the mitzvah of Bris Milah. Gemara contrasted interestingly to, it says that Klal Yisrael was bocham mishpachosav over the Parsha of Arayos, and so today we still have ksub, still it's bikatata. There's no ksuba, says the Gemara, without some conflict in it because of the fact that they accepted that mitzvah with an element of resistance. But anyway, so the Gemara is very clear that Avinu was very happy to do this mitzvah. So why was this one of the 10 Nisyonos for Avinu? So Moshe presents interesting perspective. Moshe says that Avinu spent all his days, he was Kara B'Shem Hashem. We know Chazal tell us, Eshel, that Avram excelled in the mitzvah of Achnasas Orachim, and he would invite people over to give them food and drink. But he wasn't just being nice and giving people food and drink. When they finished the meal and they gave him a groisa thank you, he would say, you really have to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he was mekarev people through his achnasas orachim. Avinu, in part of his hashpah of how he did his harbatzas Torah and his spreading of Hashem, was by being a role model. Says Rav Moshe that to be an inspiring leader, you have to be a model that you're doing things that you can also be like this. You can also do this. Everyone can do the chesed. Everyone can learn Torah. Everyone can have a relationship with Hashem. You have a spiritual leader who's acting in a way that's not for you, not so inspiring. And the fact that he's celibate and he doesn't shave or he meditates on mountains, not going to inspire people the same way as a leader who has a model that you can follow. And he says this is what Avinu was worried about. That Bris Milah, says Rav Moshe, was Rak hu v'zaro yimolu. This was only for him and his descendants, not for all his people. Meaning apparent, I'm not sure where Moshe is getting it from, that's what Moshe says, that this mitzvah was going to be for Avram and his descendants, and it was not supposed to be something that Avram was going to teach all his followers to do. So in that sense, it went against his whole approach to how he'd been Kara B'Shem Hashem, how he'd been spreading Hashem's name until now. So in that sense, I guess Rav Moshe is aligning it, they say a similar word by the Akedah. That's part of why the Akedah was such a big Nisayon. One of the reasons was because it went against the whole approach to Avodas Hashem he'd been teaching and preaching his entire life. So this was a Nisayon for Avinu. Is he going to be able to do this mitzvah, b'shleimos, meaning not to think about Hashem, do it with the same ava as everything else that Hashem commanded him. And trust Hashem that it won't hurt his ability to be mashpia. And he suggests maybe this is why it says it was done be'elone mamre, that he asked Mamre for advice. What's the advice that he was asking? He was asking Mamre, should he do it in public? Should he do it in a way where everyone's going to know about it? Should he try to conceal it? And Mamre told him, no, do it in a way where everyone's going to know about it. And in fact, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it that it was successful, and he was able to continue making the fashos and spreading love and connection to Hashem. And it says in the Pasuk of Gimel that Avraham did it be'etzam hayom hazeh, and Rashi points out he wasn't afraid of the Leitzanim. He wasn't afraid of the scoffers. Says Rav Moshe, this is what they were scoffing at him. That, you see, you change your whole approach. Now you're going to do something that makes you above the people. So, what's the explanation? Rav Moshe's theme, that he writes this in many of these pieces, is that this was what Avraham Avinu was concerned about. At the end of the day, the most important thing is to do what Hashem wants. And that's, at the end of the day, that takes precedence over any arguments we can come up with of why things are the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do. With our own arguments, at the end of the day, if we know that's what Hashem wants us to do, then all of our arguments have to fall by the wayside. It reminds me of two different angles on it. One is that there are certain venues where the advice of the Gedolim is not to be part of that venue, because it's giving legitimacy to maybe certain movements or ideals that we're not allowed to give legitimacies to. So even though you can come and let's look at the here an Orthodox Rav, and he'll give a speech and he'll make an impact, and the answer is no, you have to do the Ratzon Hashem. That's not the proper thing to do. And you worry about Hashem, it's Hashem's world, that Hashem do the kira of the ends don't justify the means. At the end of the day, the most important thing is to do what Hashem tells us to do and trust in Him that we'll be able, that'll be the biggest hashpah. That's just be the lesson Rav Moshe is taking from this Bris Milah episode. Brought to mind a story I had recently, a funny story. I was in Viznitz in Muncie, and they had a beautiful event going on, and it was Bein Hazmanim, and there were hundreds of Bachrim sitting in, I don't know hundreds, but there were tens of Bachrim sitting and learning in the morning on a Sunday morning. And they only get 3 weeks off, and it was something involving Achon Sefer Torah, and I thought it was really nice, and I snapped a picture. And I thought maybe I'll share it, make a Kiddush Hashem, show people what goes on here. A few of the Bachrim came over to me. I thought they were upset about me taking the picture, because what are you pulling that out in the base Mesirus? But eventually, somebody who spoke English came over to me, one of the Bachrim, and he said, the Rebbe is very mock, but no pictures. There's one pictures of what goes on here going out. So I was finding, I deleted the picture. So I said, I thought it would be a big Kiddush Hashem to spread it. So he gave me a tremendously Hasidish answer. He said, following what the Rebbe's directive is a bigger Kiddush Hashem. But he has a point that at the end of the day, the biggest Kiddush Hashem is to follow the Ratzon Hashem, and the biggest hashpah is to follow the will of Hashem. And that was something that Avraham Avinu was internalizing with Bris Milah. It's something he was going and accomplishing, showing his strong belief in that and commitment to that. And that's an idea that we can take from the parasha of the Bris Milah, is that importance of, on the one hand, that a good role model has to be presents something that people can learn from, and at the same time, but then when the Ratzon Hashem is something, then that, and you know that that's God's will, then you follow that, and all your arguments fall to the wayside. Wishing you all a wonderful Shabbos.